Mrs. Yarodabersi.
Ave Satana! Hail Satan! Hail Satan! Hail Satan!
Greetings, heathens. Welcome to Hail Satan. This is the podcast exploring Satanism, culture, and life in general through the eyes of modern Satanists. My name is Joseph Rose. I'm part of an amazing, thriving congregation called Satanic Delco, and we welcome members from anywhere in the world. If you want to learn a little more about that, visit satanicdelco.com. Today, I'm going to offer a broad overview of Satanism. I will touch on some of the various categories and groups that you may or may not be aware of. I will touch on what people call Theistic Satanism, as well as Atheistic or Modern Satanism. If you don't know what any of that means, stick with me and we'll get to it. If you have a moment, please visit the podcast website at hailsatanpodcast.com. You'll find links to join me on social media, a form to send me an email, and a link to join up with the whole gang on Patreon. We have a few different tiers to choose from with various benefits, including the one-of-a-kind Greetings from Hell Satanic Postcard of the Month Club. But aside from that, joining us grants you access to Satanic Delco's private Facebook group, our lively private Discord server, our weekly Zoom gatherings, game nights, movie nights, music Zooms, stickers in the mail, bonus content, special events, and much more. If you're interested in finding community with an active, eclectic group of Satanists, there is no better group to do it with. All right, let's get right to it. What is Satanism? Satanism is the religious or philosophical veneration of Satan. There you go. We can end the episode right there. But all right, not so fast. What you may not realize is that definition is a controversial statement. Specifically, it's controversial to some Satanists, and I'll explain more about that as we go. The specific wording of that definition is mine. I'm sure other people have written versions of it that are very similar. Maybe some have said it the exact same way. I don't know. But when I was writing it down, I was very intentional about which words I included and which I didn't. Nowadays, Satanism is an umbrella term. Some people call it a religion. Some people call it a philosophy. Some people think Satan is real. Reasonable people do not. To make an obvious comparison, Christianity is an umbrella term. All Christians have certain things in common. For example, they believe in Jesus Christ and that the Bible is a sacred text. But when you dig a bit farther, you find that there are many different denominations of Christianity that have many differences, sometimes very significant differences. What all Satanists have in common is the religious or philosophical veneration of Satan. But when you dig a bit farther, you find that different groups or denominations have many differences, sometimes very significant differences. And just to give you a heads up, I'm going to read some bits on and off during parts of this episode. I don't love reading long passages on a podcast, but sometimes it's what has to be done. Now, allow me to gloss over some history. Before any other documented uses, the term Satanist or Satanism was used as a pejorative. It was basically an accusatory insult. Long before the establishment of Satanism as a religion, the term was used by Christians to describe other Christians who were perceived to be enemies of the church because they went against church doctrine in some way. Maybe most notably during the Protestant Reformation of the 1500s, Catholics and Protestants accused each other of being in league with Satan. And again, it was basically just a rhetorical tool used to talk shit and try to delegitimize the opposing side. It's not all that different from the current day when some celebrity wears a wild red outfit on TV and silly people run to the internet to claim that the celebrity is in a secret evil satanic cult, and then other dummies read that and go right along with it. Obviously, that is just the tiniest bit of that history, but That's the gist of how Satanism was first used. There was no actual functioning religion of Satanism that we know of until 1966, and we'll get there. Now, if you're new to all this, let me warn you. As you begin to travel around the Satan sphere on the internet looking for more information, you might encounter one of a very few contrarians out there that will disagree with the idea that Satanism didn't start until 1966. They will probably mention an obscure Polish man named Stanisław Przybyszewski. And just to be sure that I'm pronouncing that correctly, let me check in with my friend Ashley's very Polish father to get his pronunciation of that.
Stanisław Przybyszewski.
One more time.
Stanisław Przybyszewski.
Back in 1897, he wrote a book, The Synagogue of Satan. He explored the darker aspects of human nature. He was edgy. He identified as a Satanist as part of that. In fact, he may be the earliest person on record to openly self-define as a Satanist. And he did formulate a philosophy of Satanism based on individualism, rebellion, and Satan as a liberator. Was there any type of organized religious system of Satanism there? No, there was not. So does it count? That's up to you. And this isn't exactly part of Satanism, but let me briefly mention witch trials. This was a thing, predominantly between the 15th and 18th centuries. During this time, tens of thousands of people, mostly women, but some men as well, were accused, tried, and in some cases imprisoned and even executed for witchcraft across Europe and colonial America. The alleged witchcraft often included consorting with the devil, casting spells, and causing harm to others through supernatural means. Needless to say, there was just a lot of ridiculous bullshit happening, but actual Satanism was not one of the things happening. So there is the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the older history of all this. Now, let's get into some of these different forms of Satanism. If you can, I'd like you to imagine one of those data tree infographics. The very top primary label is Satanism. Then the next bracket under that splits into two. On one side, you have Theistic Satanism, and on the other side, you have Atheistic or Modern Satanism. I will cover both. Let's start with Theistic Satanism. And the first thing I have to say about it is that I really went back and forth about including any discussion about Theistic Satanism on this episode. I wasn't sure if it was a worthwhile thing to do or if it was even the right thing to do. But in the spirit of curiosity and the pursuit of knowledge, why avoid a thing that exists in the world? There are many Satanists that don't agree that Theistic Satanists are Satanists at all. And if I'm being honest, I kind of lean toward that mindset myself. The idea of believing in fictional, supernatural deities has far more in common with Christianity than it does with the values that Satanism has always been built on, particularly things like critical thinking and having a basis in the real world. Depending on who you ask, some say that they should just be called devil worshippers, which makes sense, at least in some cases. But they do have a religious or philosophical veneration of Satan, and they do self-identify as Satanists. So I'll talk about it briefly. Personally, I see it exactly the same way I see the belief in Santa Claus or Zeus or the Christian God. Call it what you want. Theism is the belief in the existence of a god or gods. Theistic Satanism is a so-called Satanism that involves the belief in Satan as an actual deity or being that exists. There aren't a ton of these theistic Satanists, and there's even fewer of them over 30 years old because, But not surprisingly, I guess, believing in Satan isn't the only wacky part of what theistic Satanists get up to. So let's talk briefly about some of the different groups of theistic Satanism out there. There are plenty to choose from, but I'll just mention a couple of them. Let's start with a group called the Order of Nine Angles. Buckle up for this one, guys. The Order of Nine Angles is a militant, satanic, and occultist network. They originated in the UK, but eventually branched out into factions located in North America and all over the world. It rose to public recognition in the 1980s, attracting attention for its neo-Nazi ideology and activism. They describe its approach as traditional Satanism. Again, I hate to read too much, but you've got to hear some of this shit. The ONA promotes the idea that human history can be divided into a series of aeons, each of which contains a corresponding human civilization. It expresses the view that the current aeonic civilization is that of the Western world, but it claims that the evolution of this society is threatened by the Nazarene influence of the Judeo-Christian religion, which the order seeks to combat in order to establish a militaristic new social order. It calls this order the Imperium. According to order teachings, this is necessary in order for a galactic civilization to form in which Aryan society will colonize the Milky Way. It advocates a spiritual path in which practitioners are required to break societal taboos by isolating themselves from society, committing crimes, embracing political extremism and violence, and carrying out acts of human sacrifice. Order of Nine Angles members practice magic, believing that they are able to do it by channeling energies into their own causal realm from an acausal realm where the laws of physics do not apply. These magical actions are designed to help them achieve their ultimate goal of establishing the Imperium. Wow. So, when people in mainstream society accuse Satanists of committing crimes, being Nazis, believing in crazy magic, and even human sacrifice, I guess technically they aren't wrong. Now, of course, these things don't represent the vast majority of Satanists, but some people out there will get into just about anything. And I'll mention just one other example of theistic Satanism. I really get a kick out of this one. The Brotherhood of Satan. Like the Order of Nine Angles, the Brotherhood prides itself as being a traditional Satanism organization. However, they do not condone animal or human sacrifice. Their website states, "We do not believe in Satan as a symbolic entity, but rather we are considered literal Satanists that actually do believe in Satan as a manifested deity. In the last several years, we have undergone many changes to facilitate the growth of the Brotherhood, and now Master Counselors Raven, Druidian, and Anvar Pendragon are the accepted directors of the Brotherhood's national office. They state that they are here again to accomplish one objective, to restore the throne of Satan upon the earth and to destroy Christianity." The organization focuses on rituals and practices designed to honor and invoke Satan, promoting a lifestyle aligned with satanic principles. The Brotherhood of Satan encourages its members to seek personal empowerment and spiritual enlightenment through their devotion to Satan, often incorporating elements of traditional occultism and witchcraft into their practices. These guys have a YouTube channel called Brotherhood National Office, and if you're bored, I do suggest you go watch it. Their website is also pretty fantastic. And that's all the theistic Satanism I'll talk about. It's definitely a colorful aspect of Satanism. It's not something I think about very often, and it certainly isn't for me, but it's fun to talk about sometimes. Now, back to the data tree. Like I said, the very top category is Satanism. The next bracket under that splits in two. We covered theistic Satanism, and on the other side, we have atheistic or modern Satanism. They are the same thing. Modern Satanism is atheistic Satanism, and that's where we're at. Let's start at the very beginning. The religion of Satanism was born on April 30th, 1966. It was on this day that the Church of Satan was founded by Anton LaVey in San Francisco, California. LaVeyan's philosophy, as articulated in the Satanic Bible, centers on the celebration of individualism, indulgence, and rational self-interest. It rejects traditional Christian values of abstinence and altruism in favor of a pragmatic approach to life that embraces carnal and earthly pleasures. LaVeyan Satanism, as it's often called, views humans as inherently selfish beings, advocating for kindness only to those who deserve it and vengeance rather than forgiveness. It redefines the so-called sins as natural behaviors that lead to personal fulfillment, promoting a life focused on tangible, vital existence rather than spiritual or metaphysical aspirations. The philosophy of Anton LaVey is referred to as LaVeyan Satanism, obviously named for its creator. However, this is an interesting note, some LaVeyan Satanists do not like the term LaVeyan Satanism. Why is that, you ask? Well, they will be very happy to explain to you that Anton LaVey codified the religion of Satanism, and therefore anything other than his Satanism is not the one true Satanism. Their view is that to align with any other thing called Satanism makes you a pseudo-Satanist. They do not believe in the idea of satanic community, and they reject the idea that there can be any other denominations, sects, or variations of Satanism whatsoever. If you think back to the beginning and the ways that the Catholics were behaving toward the Protestants, it's all a very familiar story. As I mentioned earlier, the core of Church of Satan's philosophy is laid out in the Satanic Bible, which was published in 1969. The organization continues to publish new works, both in the form of books and essays published on its website. For more of an in-depth discussion on topics related to Anton LaVey, Church of Satan, and the Satanic Bible, you can look forward to episodes dedicated to all those things. Next up, let's talk about the Satanic Temple. Categorized as political Satanism, the Satanic Temple began as a mockumentary film project in 2012, led by Kevin Soling and former Church of Satan follower Doug Missico, also known as Doug Messner. Nowadays, those men are often known by their pseudonyms Malcolm Jarry and Lucien Greaves. The project was initially conceived as a way to satirize religious hypocrisy and promote secularism. The group quickly gained traction and grew into a left-leaning political activist organization that attracts a large audience and lots of donations. In the beginning, the group shared the belief that religious groups should not be tax exempt. But in an effort to bolster their legal standing and obfuscate their finances, they eventually altered that stance and gained a religious tax exemption from the IRS in 2019. Two of the main things the Satanic Temple is known for are the many lawsuits that they're involved with at any time, and that they are consistently plagued with internal strife and organizational schisms. As for the legal actions, at any given time, they have a whole bunch of lawsuits in progress. Most of the suits are related to abortion rights and public religious displays. In addition to those, they are also known to take legal action intended to silence criticism of their organization, like lawsuits against some of their former members and against Newsweek magazine. Now, they don't win these cases, but that doesn't seem to slow them down. Unlike the Church of Satan and most other religions, the Satanic Temple doesn't really have much in the way of a fleshed-out religious philosophy. Instead, they have the 7 fundamental tenets, which is a list of 7 very generalized platitudes based on secular humanism and designed for mass appeal. The tenets include non-specific niceties like compassion, empathy, and justice. If you're interested in the Satanic Temple, you can look forward to episodes that cover various aspects of that organization, including my own adventures with them. If your Satanism is defined by and expressed through specific left-leaning political activism, then I guess the Satanic Temple may be for you. And finally, let's touch on outsider Satanism and Satanic Delco. I consider outsider Satanism to be a natural evolution of those older ideas. With the advantage of decades of hindsight and experience to draw from, it builds upon pre-existing satanic philosophy in a way that feels like a more rational, natural fit for many modern Satanists. For a long time, if you felt attracted to or aligned with the idea of Satanism in some way, it often felt like you were left to choose between these almost opposing ideas. One clings to a false sense of elitism that adherents don't actually live up to, while another dumbs down the message as far as they can to capture a larger audience. That dichotomy simply doesn't work for the critical thinker. Anton LaVey was reacting in direct opposition to Christianity. The Satanic Temple was, in many ways, reacting to the Church of Satan and their individualist, apolitical stance. So, rather than a knee-jerk, contrarian reaction, outsider Satanism takes a more constructive, nuanced approach. It acknowledges what's good and useful about those other ideas, while building something more functional and well-defined. Where the Church of Satan rejects the idea of satanic community, Satanic Delco has proven for years that a satanic community can thrive and be a benefit to its members while embracing their inherent individualism. Where the Satanic Temple is only suitable for people with very specific political interests, outsider Satanism is completely apolitical, and Satanic Delco is a community that exists without any divisions based on cultural identity or political affiliation. Instead of divisive, wasteful political activism stunts that only enrich fucking lawyers, Satanic Delco has built a resume of effective, optional charity campaigns. The core of outsider Satanism is expressed through a set of values and a growing collection of texts that contextualize and expand on those values. Some of those values are critical thinking in the pursuit of knowledge, celebration of the self, balance, and wonder, among others. Outsider Satanism is for many Satanists who don't quite fit into that thing and don't exactly fit into that other thing either. Satanic Delco is home to hundreds of Satanists with widely varied perspectives on Satanism and just about every other aspect of life. It's a really great mix, in my opinion. If any of that stuff sounds interesting, you can visit outsidersatanism.com and satanicdelco.com. And of course, you can look forward to episodes talking about all that as time goes on. And there you have it. You've learned a little something about what Satanism is. If you keep listening to this podcast, you're bound to learn more, and there is always more. This was a lot of surface level information, but I encourage you to take the ride with us. You're going to be exposed to many different perspectives. You're going to agree with me sometimes. You'll probably disagree with me sometimes. You will love some episodes, and sometimes I will piss you off. And I wouldn't have it any other way. If you've got a moment, please visit the website at hailsatanpodcast.com. Stay safe out there, and hail Satan.
Abone olmayı,